privilege to be here with everyone today. I am Tom Blaine. I'm associate professor with Ohio State University Extension, and I'm going to be talking about outlook to the year 2050, mid-century, for Ohio today. I want to first start by saying that Ohio's climate has been changing. As Ellen pointed out, we have seen some climate change thus far, and that's certainly the case for Ohio. It is about 1.2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in our decade, this first decade of the 21st century, than it was in the 1860s, about the time when modern methods began for measuring and recording temperatures. The northern portion of the state has warmed more than the south, and it's also received more precipitation, while the south has gotten a little bit drier. If we go ahead and look out to 2050, it appears, based on the climate models that I've seen, that Ohio's average warming will probably be roughly the same as for the planet generally. Now, we could consider different kinds of scenarios as far as CO2 concentrations go. As Ellen pointed out, we're at about 390 parts per million right now on carbon dioxide. Difficult to say. It depends a lot on policies and so forth, but one of the mid-range projections out to 2050 is 450 parts per million. If that occurs, it seems likely that an average warming of about 1.75 to 2 degrees, and I am using Fahrenheit here. So if we consider about a 2 degree Fahrenheit increase between now and 2050, in Ohio, this would cause climate zones to shift. And we can imagine northern tier counties, for example, counties like Richland, Hancock, Wayne, Medina, Mahoning counties, these counties would have climates that we currently see in the southern tier. Counties like Adams, Sauter, those counties down along the Ohio River. So imagine just shifting up counties throughout Ohio, shifting up 5, 6, or 7 counties to get to the kind of climate we would see by mid-century in Ohio. Now, in general, this would mean Ohio's climate by 2050 would be about like the current climate we see in the state of Missouri. More or less. That's a state that I would say would be the most similar now to the kind of climate that we would have by 2050. Climate models seem to indicate that the greatest temperature changes tend to occur at cooler ends of the temperature spectrum. And so for Ohio, this would mean that we would have greater temperature changes in winter months than at other times of the year. This would mean our winters would be considerably milder than they are today. As I think most of you are aware, it is typical now, it's more the rule rather than the exception for Lake Erie to freeze in the wintertime. We have ice fishing and so forth on Lake Erie. Many of you may remember the winter of 2001, 2002. I call that the winter that wasn't. The exceptionally mild winter, and Lake Erie did not freeze that winter. I think by 2050, that kind of winter, especially for Lake Erie not freezing, that kind of winter will be more the rule rather than the exception with these current trends. Winters will be rainier and less snowy in Ohio. However, there will be an increased tendency toward more ice storms. Those are freezing rain events. Those kinds of events, when you have freezing rain, they're typically more common in the southern United States now than up north. They are brought about largely by warm air masses intermingling at different elevations with cold air masses, and therefore they tend to occur more in the south, but with a 2 degree warming, they will be more common here in Ohio by 2050. I want to talk a little bit about Lake Erie. Over the years, there has been quite a bit of literature indicating that the levels of the Great Lakes, especially Lake Erie, will likely fall due to increased evaporation and use of water resources for irrigation. For example, in the winter now, as I pointed out, Lake Erie tends to freeze, and during that time, there's very little or no evaporation at all from the lake. But if you have open water throughout the winter, as I indicated will be the case by mid-century, there will be evaporation through the winter. And this will lower Lake Erie's level. Also, warmer summers will cause increased evaporation. That will lower the level, and use of water resources for irrigation will cause a lower level of Lake Erie. A colleague of mine recently pointed out that there have been some new studies that indicate with severe rain events, there will be more runoff. When you have a severe rain event, you get more runoff, less percolation into the soil. And some of the models are taking that into consideration, indicating that maybe the drop in Lake Erie will not occur or it won't be as much. I think when it comes to forecasting those severe weather events, there are some problems with those forecasts, but it is a possibility. However, again, there's been considerable literature that indicates that the level of Lake Erie is likely to fall. If that occurs, this will present challenges for navigation, for marinas. It will require more frequent dredging of channels and marina areas. Also, cold water fish species will be at a disadvantage in a warmer Lake Erie. Muskie and trout would be disadvantaged. Warm water species like bluegill and bass would have an advantage. Another colleague of mine pointed out the other day that, a lot of times trout are stocked in Lake Erie, and that's true. I mean, management matters. Many of these changes can be mitigated by management. So if we lose habitat and so forth for some of these species, we can still stock cold water species, and this may allow them to survive even in a warmer lake, but they will be at a disadvantage. Agriculture, huge industry in Ohio, and of course most agricultural activities take place outdoors, and that will continue to be the case in the future. A lot of challenges for agriculture, a lot of opportunities. First of all, I want to point out that farmers are resilient. They tend to adapt. They make use of information and education. Ohio State University Extension, we reach out to agricultural producers and give them education. I think they use that and respond well. I think they will do so in the case of warmer temperatures with our education that we have for them. And they will adapt. For example, in northern Ohio, currently we don't have enough heat to produce the kinds of corn that is produced in southern Ohio along the Ohio River. 120-day corn is very common there. There's not enough heat in northern Ohio to produce 120-day corn. We have 105, 110-day variety. But that will shift. That will change. And farmers need to be educated about the opportunities that will present, because by 2050, we will see 120-day corn produced in northern Ohio. We will have enough heat for that production. At the same time, as the South warms up, there will be opportunities for warm weather crops that currently cannot flourish there, such as cotton. I pointed out Missouri as a comparison state. In southern Missouri, you have about 12 counties that currently produce cotton. Cotton is not produced in central and northern Missouri because there's just not enough heat to sustain the crop. It's likely by mid-century that cotton will be introduced into southern Ohio. More challenges and opportunities for agriculture. There's a lot of literature on the impacts of heat stress, and heat and humidity on livestock, but particularly OSU's own Norman St. Pierre, this area. He's produced studies that show that milk per cow is negatively associated with higher summer temperatures. And, of course, dairy is very important in Ohio, throughout the state. So this will be a challenge. Not to say we'll lose the dairy industry. I'm not indicating that, but I'm saying this will be a challenge for dairy farmers as we have a warmer Ohio because of the heat stress on dairy herds. Also, an increased tendency for summer drought is forecast in many climate models. This will be a challenge to farmers. It's likely that will lead to more reliance on irrigation. I want to talk about household energy. We use much of our energy heating and cooling our homes. If you stop and think about it, greater temperature increases in the winter indicate that winter household heating requirements will fall probably more rapidly than the increased demand for cooling in the summer, because there is forecast to be more warming in the winter than in summer. So on net, that would bring about a reduction in overall energy demand as far as heating and cooling homes. Again, as I was saying earlier, management matters, decisions matter. Decisions agricultural producers make, those matter. Wildlife managers. Much of what happens in the state is going to depend on how we respond, how we as Ohioans respond, in terms of education, in terms of management of our resources. There'll be a lot of challenges, but there'll also be opportunities in living in a warmer Ohio. I want to point out some of the references and suggested readings as I close here. That first reference, climate change impacts on the United States, is a 2004 report. That was an update of a previous report. It's excellent. The initial one, I believe, came out in 2000. A colleague of mine pointed out there's now a 2009 update that's recently become available. But that is excellent reading. They lay out the information very clearly, and I've always enjoyed reading those updates. NASA's Eyes on the Earth is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and that is a very good resource. I'm plugging my own fact sheet there I initially wrote when I came to OSU, 1996. It's the basic introduction to global climate change, and it's available online. It's been there for 13 years, but it's got a basic introduction on the topic, and I'm updating that now with the Global Climate Change Update 2010, which hopefully will be online in a couple of months. There's St. Pierre and others piece that I cited from Journal of Dairy Science, Economic Losses from Heat Stress by U.S. Livestock Industry. Christie and Spencer are two scholars who have done a tremendous amount of work in putting together the temperature data, especially the satellite temperature data, over the past 30 years. And they produced an enormous amount of data that's very useful in understanding current temperature trends. And then finally, the 2007 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, the IPCC, that many are familiar with. Here's my contact information, and there's my email and phone. I'd be happy to come and address any group that you have. I am with OSU Extension. We do take the University of the Public. I'd be happy to come and address your group. Or if you'd like to email me or phone with questions, if you'd like more information on global climate change in general or impacts on Ohio in particular, I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.